Imagine this. You're walking down a busy street in Manhattan when someone bumps into you and your coffee goes flying. That split second of shock, that's exactly what betrayal feels like, except it happens to your heart instead of your shirt. Have you ever felt that sharp sting when someone you trusted completely lets you down? It's like glass shattering at your feet when you least expect it. Trust is everywhere in our lives. When you're grabbing lunch with a coworker in Chicago, sharing weekend plans with your neighbor in LA, or making small talk with your barista, trust is always part of the equation. It's the invisible thread connecting us to every person we interact with, and honestly, it's one of the most valuable things we can give someone. But here's what ancient Stoic philosophers understood that we're still learning today. Not everyone deserves that precious gift of trust. Some people will take your trust and use it like a weapon against you. Others treat it like a disposable napkin, useful for a moment, then tossed aside without thought. Today, we're exploring 9 specific types of people who might seem trustworthy on the surface but could actually be undermining your happiness and peace of mind. This isn't about becoming paranoid or building walls. It's about becoming wiser and more protective of your well-being. The Stoics had this incredible ability to see people clearly, without rose-colored glasses but also without cynicism. Marcus Aurelius dealt with politicians and generals who wanted something from him, learning to distinguish between genuine people and game players. Epictetus taught that we have the power to choose who gets access to our inner circle. Your emotional well-being isn't just important, it's essential. Your inner peace is sacred territory that deserves protection. Walking away from people who misuse your trust isn't giving up on humanity. It's choosing relationships that actually nourish your soul. So let's dive into this exploration with ancient Stoic wisdom and modern practical needs, starting with the masters of manipulation. 1. People who play mind games with you. Let me tell you about Sarah, a marketing manager in downtown Seattle who thought she'd found the perfect mentor in her colleague David. He was charming, always offering to help with projects, and seemed genuinely interested in her career growth. But after 6 months, Sarah realized something disturbing. Every conversation with David left her questioning herself. He'd offer advice that contradicted what he'd said the week before, make subtle comments that undermined her confidence, and somehow always positioned himself to take credit for her ideas. David wasn't mentoring Sarah. He was playing elaborate mind games with her trust. This is the world of the manipulative individual, someone who treats your trust like a one-way express lane to their own goals. These people are like skilled magicians, distracting you with one hand while the other picks your pocket. They're masters of illusion, making it seem like they're completely on your side while they're actually sketching out their own agenda with your life as the canvas. Think about it this way. When you hand someone your trust, it's like giving them a pen to draw your portrait. In the right hands, you get a masterpiece that honors who you are. In the wrong hands, well, you might not even recognize yourself when they're done. Manipulators are experts at painting these false portraits, creating versions of reality that serve their purposes while leaving you confused and off balance. What makes these people so dangerous is their chameleon-like ability to adapt. Just like those color-changing reptiles blend into their environment, manipulators change their facts, stories, and even emotions to gain control over situations. Unlike harmless chameleons, though, these human versions are reshaping your reality to fit their needs. They'll be your biggest supporter when they need something from you, then mysteriously absent when you need support in return. Take Marcus, a real estate agent in Miami who seemed like the perfect business partner to his colleague Jennifer. He'd shower her with praise during team meetings, positioning himself as her advocate. But behind closed doors, Marcus was feeding different information to their boss, subtly undermining Jennifer's credibility while building up his own reputation. When Jennifer finally caught on, she realized that Marcus had been playing a long game, using her trust as a stepping stone to advance his own career. The tricky part about dealing with manipulators is that they often wear masks of charm and understanding. They're excellent at reading people and telling you exactly what you want to hear. They might remember your birthday, ask about your family, and seem genuinely invested in your well-being. But pay attention to the pattern beneath the performance. Do their actions consistently match their words? Are they there for you when it's inconvenient for them? Do they support you even when there's nothing in it for them? Protecting yourself from these emotional pickpockets means becoming a bit of a detective in your own life. Keep an eye out for inconsistencies in their stories, half-truths that don't quite add up, and that nagging feeling in your gut that something's off. Your intuition is often the first alarm system to go off when someone is manipulating you. So don't ignore those uncomfortable feelings. The ancient Stoic philosopher Epictetus gave us wisdom that's perfect for dealing with manipulators. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. But here's the deeper meaning: listen carefully not just to what people are saying, but to what they're not saying. Pay attention to the silences between words, the pauses between promises, the gaps between their claims and their actions. That's often where the truth hides. When you do catch someone in their manipulative act, remember that you don't owe them an explanation or a second chance. Your emotional well-being isn't just a priority, it's a necessity. Sometimes the bravest and wisest thing you can do is simply walk away from people who misuse your trust. You're the artist of your own life, and you have every right to decide who gets to hold the brush. The next time someone tries to play mind games with your trust, remember that you have the power to refuse to play. You can choose to step out of their game entirely, protecting your peace of mind and preserving your energy for relationships that actually deserve it. 2. When someone always puts you down. Meet Jessica, a graphic designer in Austin who was excited to join a new creative team. Her colleague Ryan seemed knowledgeable and experienced, so when he offered feedback on her work, she welcomed it. But after a few weeks, Jessica noticed a pattern. Ryan's feedback was always negative, always delivered with a slight smirk, and always seemed to chip away at her confidence. "That design is okay, I guess, but I would have done it differently," he'd say. Or, "You're still learning, so don't worry if your ideas aren't quite there yet." Ryan wasn't offering constructive criticism. He was a constant critic whose words were slowly eroding Jessica's belief in her own abilities. In the marketplace of human connections, trust is more valuable than gold, and the constant critic is like someone who devalues your currency every single day. This person walks around armed with a barrage of judgments, ready to fire off criticism at a moment's notice. Trusting them with your dreams, your ideas, or your vulnerabilities is like entrusting your secrets to a leaking vessel. Everything valuable just spills out, contaminated by their negativity. Here's what's really happening when someone constantly puts you down. Their criticism isn't actually about you at all. It's like looking into a funhouse mirror. What you're seeing is a distorted reflection that says more about the mirror than it does about you. Their harsh words are usually a reflection of their own insecurities, their own fears, and their own unresolved issues. They're projecting their internal struggles onto you, using your achievements and efforts as a canvas to paint their own frustrations. Think of the constant critic as a self-appointed judge in the courtroom of life, where everyone is guilty until proven innocent. They wield their gavel of judgment with the enthusiasm of a chef oversalting a stew too much, too often, and it ruins the whole experience. They seem to believe that their opinion is the final word on everything, from your career choices to your weekend plans. Take Linda, a teacher in Phoenix who had to work with a colleague named Tom. Every staff meeting, Tom would find something wrong with Linda's classroom management techniques, her lesson plans, or even her choice of educational materials. "That's not how we do things here," he'd say, or, "I've been teaching longer, so I know what works." Tom wasn't trying to help Linda improve. He was establishing himself as the authority by constantly tearing down her confidence. The constant critic operates on a simple but destructive principle. They build themselves up by tearing others down. It's like they're standing on a ladder made of other people's demolished self-esteem. Every time they criticize you, they're adding another rung to their ladder, climbing higher while pushing you lower. What makes this particularly harmful is that their criticism often comes disguised as concern or expertise. They'll say things like, "I'm only telling you this for your own good," or, "Someone needs to give you honest feedback." But there's a huge difference between constructive feedback and destructive criticism. Constructive feedback helps you grow and improve, while destructive criticism just makes you feel small and inadequate. The ancient Stoics understood this dynamic perfectly. Marcus Aurelius wisely said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injustice." This doesn't mean you should seek revenge against the constant critic. It means you should refuse to become like them. Don't let their negativity infect your own outlook on life. When you encounter someone who constantly puts you down, remember that their words are not a true measure of your worth. It's like listening to a broken radio that only plays static. Just because it's making noise doesn't mean it's broadcasting anything valuable. Their criticism is often just noise, static from their own internal struggles that has nothing to do with your actual abilities or value as a person. Stepping back from these characters is like choosing a serene mountain path over a noisy, chaotic highway. You're not proving them wrong by engaging with their criticism. You're protecting your inner peace by refusing to let their noise become the soundtrack of your life's journey. Their constant criticism should be background chatter that you tune out, not the main audio track of your daily experience. The Stoic approach to dealing with constant critics is beautifully simple. Trust in yourself and choose your confidence wisely. You know your own efforts, your own growth, and your own intentions better than anyone else. Don't let someone else's broken perspective become your reality. Your journey is yours to define, not theirs to diminish. Remember, in the end, it's your path that matters, not their commentary on it. Choose to walk forward with confidence, leaving their negativity behind like dust on the road. 3. Fair-weather friends who disappear when you need them. Picture Maria, a marketing coordinator in Denver who thought she had found her tribe when she joined a new company. Her colleague Ashley was the life of every office party, always organizing happy hours and weekend get-togethers. Ashley seemed to know everyone, remember everyone's birthday, and had an infectious laugh that could light up any room. For 6 months, Maria felt like she was part of something special until she got diagnosed with a chronic illness that required her to miss some social events and work from home occasionally. Suddenly, Ashley's texts became shorter, the invitations stopped coming, and when Maria really needed emotional support, Ashley was nowhere to be found. Maria had discovered the painful truth about fair-weather friends. They're only there when the weather is good. These are the social butterflies of our time, gliding through crowds with an ease that seems to defy gravity. They're masters of the "how are you?" and experts at remembering just enough personal details to make you feel special. With their broad smiles and endless reservoir of small talk, they paint the town red with their apparent camaraderie. But here's the thing, not all that glitters is gold, and not every friendly face represents genuine friendship. Fair-weather friends are like chameleons in the social world, changing colors to blend seamlessly into any crowd or situation. They're incredibly skilled at reading the room and becoming exactly what the moment requires. Need someone to laugh at your jokes? They're there. Want someone to join you for brunch when you're feeling great? Count them in. But when life gets messy, when you're struggling with real problems, when you need someone to sit with you in the darkness, that's when their true colors show, and often, those colors are transparent. Think about Jake, a software developer in Portland who thought he had a solid friendship with his neighbor Kevin. They'd grab beers together, watch football games, and Kevin always seemed interested in Jake's life. But when Jake went through a difficult divorce and really needed someone to talk to, Kevin suddenly became super busy with work projects. The invitations to hang out dried up, and Kevin would give awkward waves from across the street instead of stopping to chat. Kevin was a fair-weather friend who was only interested in the fun parts of friendship, not the real, sometimes difficult parts. The ancient Stoic philosopher Seneca gave us perfect wisdom for understanding this. True friendship is always serene. Real friendship has a steady, calm quality that doesn't fluctuate based on circumstances. It's like a sturdy oak tree that provides shade in the heat and shelter in the storm. Fair-weather friends, on the other hand, are more like decorative flowers, beautiful when conditions are perfect, but the first to wilt when things get tough. Here's what makes fair-weather friends particularly tricky to spot. They're often genuinely likable people who aren't intentionally trying to hurt you. They might even care about you in their own way, but their version of caring is shallow, like a puddle that looks substantial until you step in it and realize it's only an inch deep. They're interested in maintaining a popular image and keeping their social life light and fun, rather than diving into the deeper waters of authentic connection. Consider Sarah, a teacher in San Antonio who had a group of friends she'd meet for weekend brunches and girls' nights out. Everything was great until Sarah's father was diagnosed with cancer, and she needed to spend weekends helping care for him. Suddenly, the group chat got quiet when Sarah mentioned her struggles. The invitations continued, but always with the subtle message that she should take a break from all that heavy stuff and just have fun. They wanted the fun Sarah, not the Sarah who was dealing with real-life challenges. The painful reality about fair-weather friends is that they treat relationships like a buffet. They only want the good parts, the easy parts, the parts that make them feel good about themselves. They might remember your birthday and send you a cheerful text, but they won't remember that you're worried about your job security or struggling with anxiety. They're present for the celebrations but absent for the struggles. This creates a particularly lonely kind of hurt because you can't quite put your finger on what's wrong. They haven't done anything overtly cruel or mean. They just disappear when you need them most. It's like having a friend who only wants to dance with you when your favorite song is playing, but walks away the moment the music changes to something slower or more complex. Seneca's wisdom about true friendship being always serene means that real friends provide consistent emotional support regardless of circumstances. They don't fluctuate based on your mood, your success level, or how entertaining you are on any given day. They're there in the mundane moments, the difficult moments, and yes, the celebratory moments too. The key to protecting yourself from fair-weather friends isn't to become cynical about all friendships, but to learn to distinguish between surface-level social connections and deeper, more meaningful bonds. Ask yourself, would this person be there if I lost my job? If I was going through a health crisis? If I needed someone to just sit with me while I cried? If the answer is uncertain, that's valuable information about the depth of that relationship. Remember, you deserve friends who value depth over breadth, who choose to walk with you through all seasons of life, not just the sunny ones. For people who don't really listen to you, meet David, a project manager in Boston who was excited to share some big news with his colleague and friend Mark. David had just gotten engaged and was bursting to tell someone about the proposal story. He found Mark in the break room and started sharing the details. How nervous he was, how he almost dropped the ring, how his fiancée cried happy tears. But as David talked, he noticed Mark's eyes had that familiar glazed over look, like he was physically present but mentally planning his grocery list. Mark nodded at appropriate intervals and even threw in a few ahas. But when David finished his story, Mark immediately launched into a completely unrelated complaint about the office coffee machine. David realized he might as well have been talking to the wall. This is the world of the inattentive listener, a character as common in our daily lives as smartphones, and often just as distracting. These are the people who nod along in conversations while their minds are clearly somewhere else entirely. You could be sharing your deepest fears or your greatest achievements, and they'd respond with the same level of engagement they'd give to a weather report. Picture this scenario. You're trying to have a meaningful conversation with someone, pouring your heart out about a challenge you're facing at work or in your personal life. But instead of looking at you, really seeing you, they're scrolling through their phone like it's the latest bestseller. Their physical body is there, but their attention is completely absorbed by whatever's happening on that screen. It's like playing tennis against a curtain. You keep hitting the ball, but there's no rally, no real game happening. Take Jennifer, a nurse in Atlanta who was dealing with some serious burnout from her demanding job. She decided to open up to her friend Lisa during what she thought would be a supportive coffee date. Jennifer started explaining how emotionally drained she felt, how she was questioning whether she was cut out for healthcare, and how she needed advice about possibly changing careers. But throughout the entire conversation, Lisa kept checking her phone, responding to texts, and even took a call from her hairdresser to reschedule an appointment. When Jennifer finished talking, Lisa's response was, "That's rough. But hey, did you see what happened on that reality show last night?" Jennifer felt completely unheard and invisible. The ancient Stoic philosopher Seneca gave us wisdom that perfectly applies here. To be everywhere is to be nowhere. In our world of endless notifications, social media updates, and digital distractions, the inattentive listener has become a walking example of this principle. They're trying to be present in multiple places at once. Physically with you, mentally with their phone, emotionally somewhere else entirely. And the result is that they're not really present anywhere. Here's what makes this particularly frustrating. Listening isn't just about hearing words. Real listening is about connection, about making the other person feel seen and valued. When someone gives you their attention, they're giving you one of their most precious resources, their time and mental energy. When someone refuses to give you that attention, they're essentially saying that whatever's on their screen is more important than what's in your heart. Think about Carlos, a college student in Los Angeles who was struggling with anxiety about his upcoming graduation and job search. He tried to talk to his roommate Alex about his fears and concerns, hoping for some encouragement or even just someone to listen. But Alex spent the entire conversation playing a mobile game, occasionally looking up to say, "Yeah, man," or "That sucks," without any real understanding of what Carlos was going through. Carlos left that conversation feeling more alone than before he started talking. The inattentive listener creates a particularly isolating experience because they're physically present but emotionally absent. It's like being hungry and sitting down to what looks like a feast, only to discover all the food is plastic. The appearance of connection is there, but there's no real nourishment happening. What's especially challenging about dealing with inattentive listeners is that they often don't realize they're doing it. They might genuinely think they're being good friends or colleagues because they're physically showing up to conversations. But showing up isn't the same as being present. Being present means putting away distractions, making eye contact, asking follow-up questions, and responding in ways that show you've actually absorbed what the other person is saying. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, wisely noted, "It's not that we have little time, but more that we waste a good deal of it." This applies perfectly to conversations with inattentive listeners. Life is too short to spend your precious words and emotional energy on people who treat your thoughts and feelings like background noise to their digital entertainment. When you encounter someone who consistently fails to give you their attention during conversations, it's not just about respect. It's about recognizing that your time and emotional energy are valuable resources that deserve to be invested wisely. You wouldn't keep putting money into a broken vending machine that never gives you what you paid for. So why keep investing your emotional energy in someone who never gives you the connection you're seeking? The Stoic approach to dealing with inattentive listeners is to respect your own time and words enough to seek out people who will actually receive them. Don't let someone else's inability to focus turn your meaningful thoughts into forgotten background chatter. Your experiences, your feelings, and your stories deserve an audience that's actually listening. Remember, real connection happens when two people are fully present with each other. Don't settle for anything less than that genuine presence, because that's where true friendship and meaningful relationships actually live. 5. Selfish people who only care about themselves. Let me tell you about Rachel, a marketing specialist in Chicago who thought she'd found a great friend in her coworker Amanda. They started having lunch together regularly, and Rachel genuinely enjoyed their conversations, or what she thought were conversations. After a few months, Rachel realized something disturbing. Amanda only talked about herself. Every story Rachel tried to share somehow became about Amanda's similar but more interesting experience. When Rachel mentioned she was worried about her mom's health, Amanda immediately launched into a detailed account of her own family's medical history. When Rachel got a promotion, Amanda's response was to complain about how she deserved a promotion too. Rachel had discovered she wasn't in a friendship. She was serving as a free audience for Amanda's one-person show. This is the world of the selfish individual. Someone who has completely misplaced their empathy compass and operates like they're the only person who matters in any situation. Picture someone who strides through life's puddles without caring who gets splashed. That's exactly how these people move through relationships and social situations. Their radar for understanding other people's feelings is permanently switched off, like a GPS that only shows one location: themselves. Think about it this way. We all live in communities, whether that's our workplace, our neighborhood, or our friend group. Most people understand that communities work best when everyone contributes something and considers how their actions affect others. But selfish people operate like they're the only bee in the hive, buzzing around focused solely on their own needs while completely ignoring the fact that their actions impact everyone around them. Take Michael, a software engineer in Seattle who shared an apartment with 2 roommates. While his roommates took turns buying groceries, cleaning common areas, and being considerate about noise levels, Michael treated the apartment like his personal hotel. He'd eat food that others bought, leave messes for others to clean, and play loud music late at night without any consideration for his roommates' schedules. When confronted, Michael's response was always some version of, "I pay rent too, so I should be able to do whatever I want." He couldn't understand that living with others requires thinking beyond your own immediate desires. What makes selfish people particularly difficult to deal with is their complete inability to see situations from anyone else's perspective. It's like they're wearing special glasses that only let them see their own needs, wants, and problems. Everyone else in their world exists as supporting characters in their personal drama, not as real people with their own feelings, struggles, and dreams. Consider Lisa, a teacher in Miami who had a friend named Karen who would call her every week to vent about work problems, relationship drama, and family issues. Lisa always listened patiently and offered support and advice. But when Lisa went through a difficult divorce and really needed someone to talk to, Karen was suddenly too busy to chat. When they did talk, Karen would listen for about 2 minutes before redirecting the conversation back to her own problems. Karen wasn't looking for friendship. She was looking for a free therapist who would never expect anything in return. The ancient Stoics understood this dynamic perfectly. There's a wise saying, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." This means that when we act in ways that benefit our community, our family, friends, workplace, or society, we ultimately benefit ourselves too. But selfish people operate on the opposite principle. They think that taking care of only themselves will make them happy, but they end up isolated and surrounded by people who eventually get tired of being used. Here's what's particularly challenging about selfish people. They often don't see themselves as selfish at all. They might even think they're just being independent or looking out for themselves. They'll justify their behavior by saying things like, "I have to put myself first," or "No one else is going to take care of me." But there's a huge difference between healthy self-care and selfish disregard for others. Think about James, a sales manager in Denver who would consistently take credit for his team's successes while blaming them for any failures. When the team landed a big client, James made sure his boss knew about his leadership in closing the deal. But when they lost a potential client, James was quick to point out specific team members who dropped the ball. James thought he was protecting his career, but he was actually destroying the trust and respect of everyone around him. Selfish people are like emotional vampires. They drain energy from everyone around them without giving anything back. They'll call you when they need something, but they're mysteriously unavailable when you need support. They'll dominate conversations with their problems but have no patience for yours. They'll expect you to accommodate their schedule, their preferences, and their needs, but they won't extend the same courtesy to you. The most dangerous thing about trusting selfish people is that they'll use your generosity against you. If you're someone who naturally gives to others, they'll take and take until you have nothing left to give. They see kindness as weakness and generosity as an invitation to take advantage. Protecting yourself from selfish people means recognizing that relationships should be mutual exchanges of care, support, and consideration. If you find yourself always giving and never receiving, always accommodating and never being accommodated, always listening and never being heard, that's a clear sign you're dealing with someone who only cares about themselves. Remember, setting boundaries with selfish people isn't mean. It's necessary for your own well-being and mental health. 6. People who love to push your buttons. Meet Tom, an accountant in Dallas who worked alongside a colleague named Steve. At first, Tom thought Steve was just being playful when he'd make little comments like, "Oh, working late again? Some of us know how to manage our time better." But over the months, Tom noticed a pattern. Steve had an uncanny ability to find exactly the right thing to say to get under Tom's skin. If Tom mentioned he was trying to eat healthier, Steve would show up with donuts and say, "Come on, live a little, one won't kill you." If Tom was stressed about a deadline, Steve would casually mention how he'd already finished his work early. Steve wasn't being friendly. He was systematically pushing Tom's buttons, and he seemed to enjoy watching Tom's reactions. This is the world of the constant irritator, someone who has earned a PhD in provocation and treats getting under your skin like an art form. These people are like emotional ninjas, throwing tiny darts that might not hurt individually, but over time, they add up to serious damage to your peace of mind. They have this unique talent for finding your sensitive spots and poking them just enough to get a reaction, but not so obviously that you can call them out on it. Picture this. You know that one person who always seems to know exactly what to say to ruffle your feathers? They're masters of the subtle jab, the backhanded compliment, the perfectly timed sarcastic comment. They operate with surgical precision, finding your insecurities and pressing on them like they're playing a twisted game of emotional whack-a-mole. The most frustrating part is that they do it so smoothly, you might even question whether it's actually happening or if you're just being too sensitive. Take Sarah, a graphic designer in Portland who had to work with a team leader named Mike. Mike had this way of questioning everything Sarah did, but always with a smile and in a tone that sounded almost helpful. "Are you sure that's the best color choice?" he'd ask. Or, "I'm not sure the client will understand this design. Maybe something simpler?" Mike never directly criticized Sarah's work, but his constant questioning made her second-guess every creative decision she made. He was systematically undermining her confidence while maintaining plausible deniability. What makes these button pushers so dangerous is that they're incredibly skilled at staying just below the radar. They know exactly how far they can push without crossing obvious lines. They're like master manipulators who understand that the most effective way to control someone is to keep them slightly off balance all the time. They'll make you feel frustrated, annoyed, or insecure, but in ways that are hard to pinpoint or explain to others. Consider Maria, a nurse in Phoenix who had to deal with a coworker named Janet. Janet had this habit of making comments that sounded concerned but were actually designed to create doubt. "I hope you double-checked that medication dosage," she'd say, even when Maria had been doing the job perfectly for years. Or, the patient in room 12 seemed confused after you talked to them. I wonder if they understood your explanation. Janet wasn't trying to help. She was planting seeds of self-doubt in Maria's mind. The ancient Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius gave us perfect wisdom for dealing with these emotional provocateurs. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This is your secret weapon when facing someone who loves to push your buttons. They might try to ruffle your feathers, but remember your mind is your territory, and you get to decide what affects you and what doesn't. Here's the thing about button pushers. They're playing a game that requires your participation. They throw out their little provocations like fishing lines, hoping you'll bite. But you don't have to take the bait. When they make their sly comments, you can choose to let those words float by like clouds on a windy day. You're not required to react, respond, or engage with their attempts to disturb your peace. Think about Kevin, a teacher in Atlanta who had to work with a colleague named Robert. Robert would make subtle comments about Kevin's teaching methods, his classroom management, and even his choice of ties. For months, Kevin would get defensive and try to justify his choices, which only seemed to encourage Robert's behavior. Then Kevin realized he was playing Robert's game. The next time Robert made a snide comment, Kevin simply smiled, nodded, and walked away. Without Kevin's reactions to fuel his behavior, Robert eventually moved on to other targets. The key to dealing with people who love to push your buttons is understanding that their behavior says everything about them and nothing about you. They're usually dealing with their own insecurities, frustrations, or need for control, and they're using you as an outlet for those feelings. When you refuse to react, you're not giving them what they're looking for, and they'll typically lose interest. Marcus Aurelius also taught us that we're the calm in the storm, the unshakable center of our own experience. When button pushers come at you with their provocations, you can choose to be like a mountain, solid, unmovable, and unaffected by the weather swirling around you. That's real power, and it's power that no one can take away from you. Remember, you're playing a different game than they are, one of wisdom, peace, and inner strength. 7. Why some people always play the victim. Let me introduce you to Jennifer, a project coordinator in San Francisco who thought she was being a good friend when she started regularly checking in on her colleague Mark. Mark always seemed to be dealing with some crisis. His landlord was being unreasonable. His boss was picking on him. His family didn't understand him. And even the barista at his coffee shop was apparently rude to him specifically. At first, Jennifer felt sympathetic and wanted to help. She'd listen to his problems, offer advice, and even help him brainstorm solutions. But after 6 months, Jennifer realized something troubling. Mark never actually implemented any of the solutions they discussed. Instead, he seemed to collect problems like some people collect stamps, always ready to display his latest addition to anyone who would listen. This is the world of the eternal victim, someone who has become so comfortable in the role of the suffering protagonist that they've forgotten how to be anything else. These people wear their misfortunes like a badge of honor, turning every setback into evidence that the world is conspiring against them. They've mastered the art of transforming themselves into the main character of every tragedy, even when they're the ones writing the script. Picture someone who sails through life like a captain who consistently ignores their compass, steering directly into every storm they encounter, then wondering why the seas are never calm. They make choices that create problems, then act surprised when those problems manifest. It's like watching someone repeatedly touch a hot stove and then complain about getting burned, but never learning to avoid the stove. Take Lisa, a marketing assistant in Chicago who worked with a teammate named Brian. Brian had been in the same entry-level position for 5 years, constantly complaining about being overlooked for promotions. But when opportunities for professional development came up, Brian always had excuses for why he couldn't participate. Training sessions conflicted with his lunch plans, networking events were not his thing, and he'd never volunteer for challenging projects because they were too stressful. Brian wanted the rewards of career advancement without putting in any of the effort, then blamed the company for not recognizing his potential. What makes eternal victims particularly exhausting to be around is their incredible ability to find problems in every solution. Offer them practical advice, and they'll explain why it won't work. Suggest resources that could help, and they'll list all the reasons those resources are inadequate. Try to help them see their role in their problems, and suddenly you become part of the conspiracy against them. The ancient Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius observed, "Our life is what our thoughts make it." This wisdom perfectly captures the eternal victim's fundamental problem. They've trained their minds to see themselves as powerless recipients of life's cruelty rather than active participants who can influence their circumstances. Their narrative becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where they expect bad things to happen, so they unconsciously make choices that ensure bad things do happen. Consider Rachel, a teacher in Denver who had a friend named Amy. Amy would call Rachel every week with a new crisis. Her apartment was too expensive, but she wouldn't consider moving or getting a roommate. Her job was stressful, but she wouldn't look for new opportunities or discuss her concerns with her supervisor. Her dating life was disappointing, but she wouldn't try new ways of meeting people or work on the personal issues that might be affecting her relationships. Amy wanted sympathy for her problems but had zero interest in actually solving them. Here's what's particularly tricky about eternal victims. They often generate genuine sympathy at first because everyone faces real challenges in life. The difference is that most people use difficulties as motivation to grow, change, or find solutions. Eternal victims use difficulties as evidence that they're special in their suffering and deserve ongoing sympathy without any expectation of personal responsibility. Think about David, a software developer in Austin who constantly complained about his financial struggles. He'd tell coworkers about his credit card debt, his inability to save money, and how expensive everything was becoming. But David also spent money on expensive gadgets, ate out for lunch every day, and had multiple streaming subscriptions he rarely used. When friends suggested budgeting apps or financial planning resources, David would explain why those wouldn't work for his unique situation. He preferred complaining about his financial problems to actually addressing them. The most dangerous aspect of getting too involved with eternal victims is that their problems become quicksand. The more you try to help, the deeper you sink into their cycle of complaint and inaction. They'll drain your emotional energy with their constant crises while never actually using your advice or support to improve their situations. Eternal victims operate on a simple but destructive principle. Problems are things that happen to them, not things they have any power to influence or solve. This mindset keeps them stuck in patterns of suffering while simultaneously making them exhausting to be around. Marcus Aurelius also taught that we have the power to choose our responses to life's challenges. Eternal victims have chosen to respond to every challenge by casting themselves as helpless, which ironically makes them more helpless over time. The key to protecting yourself from eternal victims is recognizing that empathy doesn't require you to drown in someone else's chosen helplessness. 8. Two-faced people who talk behind your back. Meet Amanda, a sales representative in New York who thought she had developed a genuine friendship with her colleague Jessica. During their coffee breaks, Jessica would share personal stories, ask about Amanda's weekend plans, and even compliment her presentation skills. Jessica seemed warm, supportive, and genuinely interested in Amanda's success. But Amanda's world came crashing down when a mutual friend mentioned overhearing Jessica at a company party, telling a group of coworkers that Amanda was trying too hard to impress the boss, and that her recent promotion was probably just because she's good at playing politics. Amanda realized she had been completely deceived. Jessica was a master of masks, dazzling her with smiles and honeyed words while systematically undermining her reputation behind her back. This is the dangerous world of the two-faced individual, a chameleon in human form who has perfected the art of being one person to your face and a completely different person when you're not around. They're like skilled actors performing in a play where you don't even know you're part of the cast, and the drama they're creating is entirely at your expense. Picture someone who can switch from warm laughter to cold betrayal faster than you can change channels on your TV. These people have turned duplicity into an art form, weaving webs of rumors and half-truths that spread through social circles like wildfire. They'll remember your birthday, ask about your family, and seem genuinely invested in your well-being, all while collecting information they can later use against you in conversations with others. Take Michael, a graphic designer in Los Angeles who worked with a teammate named Craig. Craig would regularly ask Michael about his projects, offering encouragement and even suggesting they collaborate on future work. Michael appreciated having what seemed like a supportive colleague and would often share his creative ideas and career aspirations with Craig. But Michael later discovered that Craig had been telling their supervisor that Michael was unfocused and always talking about personal projects instead of company work. Craig had been using their friendly conversations as ammunition to undermine Michael's professional reputation. What makes two-faced people particularly dangerous is their ability to maintain perfect facades while systematically destroying trust and relationships behind the scenes. They're emotional con artists who understand that the most effective way to damage someone is to do it when that person can't defend themselves. They plant seeds of doubt about your character, your competence, or your intentions, then watch as those seeds grow into full-blown reputation problems. Consider Sarah, a teacher in Phoenix who thought she had found a mentor in her colleague Patricia. Patricia would offer advice about classroom management, share teaching resources, and even invite Sarah to lunch regularly. Sarah felt grateful to have such a supportive senior colleague and would often confide in Patricia about her challenges as a new teacher. But Sarah later learned that Patricia had been sharing these confidences with the principal, framing Sarah's honest struggles as evidence that she wasn't cut out for teaching. Patricia was using Sarah's trust as a weapon against her. The ancient Stoic philosopher Seneca gave us wisdom that perfectly applies to dealing with two-faced people. Associate with those who will make a better man of you. This isn't just about surrounding yourself with positive influences. It's about recognizing that people who gossip, backstab, and spread rumors are toxic to your growth and well-being. They're not just betraying your trust. They're poisoning the entire environment around you. Here's what's particularly insidious about two-faced individuals. They often target people who are naturally trusting and open. If you're someone who tends to see the best in others and share freely in relationships, you're exactly the type of person they look for. They see your openness as vulnerability and your trust as an opportunity to gather information they can later weaponize. Think about Lisa, a nurse in Seattle who had developed what she thought was a close friendship with her coworker Janet. Lisa would share her concerns about difficult patients, her struggles with work-life balance, and even her personal relationship challenges. Janet seemed like the perfect confidant, always listening, always sympathetic, always offering support. But Lisa discovered that Janet had been sharing these private conversations with other staff members, often adding her own negative commentary about Lisa's unprofessional attitude and personal problems affecting her work. Two-faced people operate on a simple but destructive principle. They build themselves up by tearing others down, but they're too cowardly to do it directly. Instead, they smile to your face while sharpening knives behind your back. They're like emotional terrorists who use your own trust and openness as weapons against you. The most heartbreaking aspect of discovering someone is two-faced is the realization that your genuine friendship or professional relationship was completely one-sided. While you were building trust and connection, they were collecting ammunition. While you were being authentic and vulnerable, they were calculating how to use that vulnerability against you. Seneca's advice about associating with people who make you better becomes crucial here. Two-faced people don't just fail to make you better, they actively work to make you worse off. They damage your reputation, undermine your relationships, and create environments of distrust and suspicion. Protecting yourself from two-faced people means learning to recognize the signs. They ask a lot of personal questions but share little about themselves. They seem unusually interested in your problems or conflicts with others. And they have a pattern of speaking negatively about mutual friends or colleagues when those people aren't present. 9. Toxic people who drain your energy. Meet Carlos, a software engineer in Miami who used to love his job until his company hired a new team member named Derek. At first, Carlos tried to be welcoming and helpful, but he quickly noticed that every interaction with Derek left him feeling exhausted and frustrated. Derek had a unique talent for turning every conversation into a complaint session, every team meeting into a drama, and every project into a crisis. If the team celebrated a successful product launch, Derek would focus on what went wrong. If someone shared good news, Derek would find the negative angle. It was like Derek carried a dark cloud wherever he went, and that cloud was slowly blocking out the sun for everyone around him. This is the world of the toxic individual. Someone who has mastered the art of being a human rain cloud on everyone else's sunny day. They don't just have bad days occasionally. They seem to specialize in spreading negativity, doubt, and emotional chaos wherever they go. Being around them is like trying to build a sandcastle of happiness and self-esteem while they stand there with a bigger foot, ready to kick it over just when you think you're making progress. Picture someone who walks into a room and immediately changes the entire atmosphere. Not in a good way, more like how a single rotten apple can spoil an entire basket. These people have an almost supernatural ability to find the worst in every situation, the problem in every solution, and the reason why nothing will ever work out. They're emotional vampires who feed on drama, conflict, and other people's discomfort. Take Jennifer, a marketing coordinator in Portland who had to work closely with a colleague named Robert. Robert had this way of making every project feel impossible before it even started. That That deadline is unrealistic, he'd say, or the client will never approve this approach. When the team would brainstorm creative solutions, Robert would immediately list all the reasons why each idea would fail. When they did succeed despite his predictions, Robert would claim it was just luck or that the real problems would show up later. Working with Robert was like trying to run a marathon while carrying a backpack full of rocks. What makes toxic people particularly dangerous is their ability to make their negativity seem reasonable or even protective. They'll frame their constant pessimism as being realistic or looking out for the team. They'll present their drama stirring as just being honest or trying to help people see the truth. But there's a huge difference between healthy caution and toxic negativity, just like there's a difference between constructive criticism and destructive pessimism. Consider Maria, a teacher in Denver who had to deal with a colleague named Patricia during faculty meetings. Patricia would consistently shoot down new teaching initiatives, complain about administrative decisions, and create an atmosphere of cynicism and defeat among the staff. When other teachers tried to implement positive changes in their classrooms, Patricia would predict failure and point out potential problems. She wasn't protecting anyone. She was systematically destroying morale and making it harder for everyone to do their jobs effectively. The ancient Stoic philosopher Epictetus gave us perfect wisdom for dealing with toxic individuals. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This is crucial because toxic people are like emotional storms. You can't control when they'll show up or how intense they'll be, but you can learn to weather them without letting them destroy your inner peace. Here's what's particularly challenging about toxic people. They often seem to be battling their own emotional hurricanes, which can make you feel sympathetic toward them. You might think, they're just going through a tough time, or maybe they need someone to be patient with them. But there's a difference between someone who's temporarily struggling and someone who has made toxicity their permanent way of being. Think about David, a sales manager in Chicago who tried to maintain a friendship with his former college roommate, Kevin. Every time they got together, Kevin would spend the entire time complaining about his job, his relationships, his family, and basically everything else in his life. David would try to offer advice, suggest solutions, or even just change the subject to something more positive. But Kevin would always steer the conversation back to his problems and grievances. After these meetups, David would feel emotionally drained and depressed, like Kevin had transferred all his negative energy directly into David's mind. Toxic people operate like emotional black holes. They suck in all the positive energy around them and give nothing back. They'll drain your enthusiasm, your optimism, and your peace of mind, often while acting like they're the ones who need support and understanding. They're masters at making their problems everyone else's problems and their bad moods everyone else's responsibility. The most important thing to understand about toxic people is that their behavior isn't really about you. It's about them. They're usually dealing with their own unresolved issues, insecurities, or emotional wounds, and they're projecting those problems onto everyone around them. But understanding this doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your own well-being to accommodate their toxicity. Epictetus taught that we have the power to choose our responses to difficult people and situations. When you're dealing with someone toxic, you can choose to protect your own emotional energy rather than getting pulled into their negativity. Remember, your peace of mind is precious, and you have every right to guard it carefully. How to protect your peace like a Stoic. We've traveled together through the landscape of human relationships, exploring 9 types of people who can undermine your trust, drain your energy, and disturb your peace. From the mind game players to the energy drainers, from the fair-weather friends to the button pushers, we've seen how recognizing these patterns can protect your emotional well-being and help you make wiser choices about who deserves a place in your life. The ancient Stoics understood something that's just as relevant today as it was 2,000 years ago. Your inner peace is your most valuable possession, and protecting it isn't selfish, it's essential. When you guard your trust carefully and choose your relationships wisely, you're not building walls around yourself. You're creating space for genuine connections to flourish while keeping toxic influences at bay. Remember, trust is like handing someone the pen to sketch your life's portrait. The right people will create something beautiful that honors who you are. The wrong people will leave you unrecognizable, wondering how you let someone else hold so much power over your happiness. By learning to spot the 9 types we've discussed, you're taking back control of that pen and deciding who truly deserves to help write your story. The Stoic path isn't about perfection or never making mistakes in relationships. It's about wisdom, discernment, and the courage to walk away from people who consistently prove they don't deserve your trust. As Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca taught us, we have the power to choose our responses, protect our minds, and surround ourselves with people who make us better rather than worse. Your journey toward meaningful relationships and inner peace starts with a simple but powerful principle: trust wisely and respect deeply. Let these words guide you as you navigate the complex world of human connections, always remembering that your peace of mind isn't just important, it's sacred. If this wisdom resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like this video, subscribe to Stoic Vivu for more ancient wisdom applied to modern life, and hit that notification bell so you never miss insights that could transform your relationships. Leave a comment below with your own experiences or simply share our guiding principle. Trust wisely, respect deeply. Stay stoic and keep growing.